kicks the goal. Making something out of nothing.
Malcheski, is that the grand final?
Jimmy Bartell can make a hero of himself.
That is a brilliant snap.
He's kicked the goal and Freeman to win it after the siren. What a game of football at the MCG.
Welcome to another episode of The Protected Zone, where we talk about everything that was related to AFL football. I'm Eddie J, and my co-host over in Sumatra is...
Linton Anam. How are you, Eddie? And how are you, everyone?
Well, I'm very well, and I'm sure that the audience is very well. It's actually been a little bit wet and cold in the inner west of Sydney. What's happening over in Padang?
Wet and cold in the west. Well, in this part of the west, it's hot and hot and hot.
So it's still very, very hot over there.
I think it never actually goes cold because we are living under the equator and, tropical condition lasts forever, it seems. It's a constant. So maybe I should stop complaining about, it's hot, because it's always hot. So better talk about something else.
Well, the problem with complaining all the time is that generally people don't listen anyway. So what's the point, I always say, but I'll listen to your complaints anyway. But we had quite a big week this week, and I'm talking about politics, of course, and there was the UK election, there was James Comey's evidence against Donald Trump. There was quite a few things that happened this week, and there was an upset result in the UK election.
Yes, I think they got the cue from our footy season, upset against all the sort of expectation. Before the election, everyone thought the Prime Minister will increase the majority and that the left-wing ratbag will lose badly and, gone by this time of the week. But the result was just like a, good footy match. It was close. Well, it's, decided, but it's a close election.
Yes, it was very close, but before we go on, I'd always like to point out that our audience is growing exponentially week by week, and you can subscribe to our program, the AFL Protected Zone, on iTunes. You can also listen to us on SoundCloud. You can also listen to us on YouTube, and if all of that fails, you can always go to the website, which is theprotectedzone.com. So I think we've got everything covered there.
Yeah, soon we may be able to broadcast on old transistor radio, perhaps.
That would be very, very exciting. Now, you did mention before that the UK election was a little bit of an upset, and round 12 actually featured quite a few upsets.
Yes, it was another round of expected upsets all around, but I tend to think it was the position of the moon, Eddie. Over the weekend, we had a full moon. You see the moon?
Yes, I did. It looked like cheese.
So on Saturday evening, I was looking up the sky, looking at, marveling how marvelous it is, the moon, full moon. But I noticed it was decidedly smaller, 20%. We're a bit shortchanged, like our weekend, It's stretched thinly. Started on Thursday until Monday, 5 days weekend. That is not weekend, is it?
No, not really. But all this talk about apogees and election upsets and that sort of thing, do you think that players take any notice of that sort of information, and does it affect their performance?
Oh, I think it's a subconscious thing, and they may not realize, but they were guided by the global mood change and the subtle position of the moon. I think it all affects the performance of the players.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you any more. I'm very sure that apogees and politics, players take a notice of these sort of things, and it affects them quite drastically.
Yes, and one of the best match of the round that was actually happened not on the weekend but actually on Monday. There was a game between Melbourne and Collingwood. What did you make of it?
Well, I dispute what you say there, where you say that it was the match of the round. It wasn't the match of the round. It was the match of the year so far. It was one of the best matches that I've seen. Probably not. I'd even go further to say that it's been the best match over the past 4 or 5 years. That's how good it was.
Yes, it was a very good standard. Obviously, Collingwood was missing a few talented players, notably Billy Elliott. Collingwood win when Billy Elliott plays. Collingwood lose when Billy's not in the team.
It's quite simple, isn't it? I think he's just one of those linchpin players within a particular team. It's a little bit like Aaron Sandilands at Fremantle. I think Jamie Elliott is one of those players for Collingwood. If he's there, Collingwood win. If he's not there, they tend to lose, even if it was only by 4 points on the weekend.
Yes, I think Nathan Buckley should have had him in the team, even though he's injured. Just having him on the bench would have made a difference.
I think it would have, because he's also got that stylish haircut, and those sort of things do affect players on the ground. Even if Jamie Elliott was not on the field, having him on the sidelines would have influenced the players. They would have risen to the occasion even further. Now, I did mention that it was one of the best games for possibly the last 3 or 4 years, but Jamie Elliott there on the sidelines sporting his fantastic new haircut, that would have lifted the team.
Even before the game actually took place, there was a classic sort of exchange of banter. We probably used to see it more often, but, players of oppositions sort of exchange a few banters, and that was good.
Oh, it's always good to have a bit of banter, but before we go on, listen to this.
It's about confidence, isn't it? 90 seconds before half-time. Vince buys some territory, and Jeremy Howe does what Howe does.
It's just set up for Howe, though, isn't it? Here's that first one. That's just an incredible leap.
Well, that's mark of the year, because not only did he get up, he then got the bounce and lift from the up. He got to the shoulders and then the bounce up. Jeremy Howe, you're an absolute freak machine. Incredible stuff.
Now, what did you think about that grab?
Oh, as the headline says, how was that?
How was that exactly? But why do we... And by the way, for those of the audience that don't understand what's going on, it was Jeremy Howe. He's got a habit of reaching up to the sky and taking these spectacular marks over 1, 2, 3 or 4 players. On this occasion, he just lifted himself into the sky. He took the mark of the century, I'd say. It was pretty damn good.
Yeah, Jumping Jeremy, I would call him. Why do you think we love that sort of speckies or screamers or hangers?
Yeah, so taking that sort of mark is an incredibly difficult physical feat, and it's a very difficult technical feat. And also, you need to be in the zone. You need to think about the theory of it. You need to work out the angle that you'll be jumping at. It's quite spectacular when it comes off. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it comes off really, really well. So that was Jeremy Howe, and you could hear the buzz around the MCG 5 minutes after the mark was taken. So it's actually quite stunning.
Yes, speckies, screamers, hangers. They're the part of one big attraction of our code, isn't it? I mean, everyone used to watching soccer or rugby union or whatever. They won't have that, and they're just simply amazed how humans can fly. And our game has a tradition of players taking constant screamers. Like we have Kazali. The legend was still talked about, sung about in the song like Up There Kazali.
Well, do you think it's time for a new song called Up There Howe?
Well, we didn't have a song for Jazelenko or Warwick Kappa or... do you remember Tony Modra? Yeah, I mean, we seem to be, producing those high flyers, constantly. But Jumping Jeremy, I think he's one of a kind.
Yes, he certainly is. So I'm not sure if Up There Howe has got the same ring as Up There Kazali, but we'll work on it. So previously we talked about the upset in the UK election, and it obviously influenced the players on the weekend. At the Docklands, Carlton position number 17 on the ladder, defeated the ladder leaders, Greater Western Sydney. What happened there?
I think, for last month or so, GWS, another team from the West, has been kind of struggling. I mean, as you said previously, that good teams manage to win those close contests, even though they're not playing their best footy. Indeed, Giants managed to win 4 of the last 5 games, I think, by less than 8 points. So they could have lost all 4 games, but they managed to win. I think their injury tolls are hitting the wall, and it was about time. It was about to happen.
I believe that's true, but I guess it also depends on which way you look at it. Is it hiding something, or is it injuries, or what exactly is it? And I'm referring to what happened to Hawthorn in 2016, where they've been a great team for a long, long time, and they won so many close games last year, but that was masking something else, and we're seeing what that masked this year, where they've fallen into a heap. The same thing happened to Geelong in 2014, where they won also a lot of close games, very small margins, and then they fell into a heap the following season. Do you think the same thing will happen to Greater Western Sydney?
Yeah, up to a point. And, you talked about Hawthorn last year. They lost the mask, Sam Mitchell and Jordan Lewis. They were the masks. And they took off the mask and they exposed themselves, and, look what happened. And also the other thing we have to remember is that Great Western Sydney, the team from the West, doesn't travel very well in Melbourne. Their records in Melbourne is not that good.
Well, it seems like that's a factor for all of the teams from the West. Greater Western Sydney, West Coast, Western Bulldogs, they don't seem to travel very well at the moment. So could it be some sort of issue with the West?
So even one of those teams from the West make it to the grand final, they will struggle at the G.
Unless they happen to play another team from the West, and in that case, both teams will struggle. Speaking of the West, there was also another game involving the West on Thursday night. Now, Thursday seems like it was almost like another century, but yes, there was a game last Thursday. It was Sydney against Western, or the Swans against the Bulldogs. I'm not sure which one we call it, but Sydney defeated Western.
And that was the grand final replay version 2, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
And so they've been sort of winning, losing, winning.
They have. Western have not been very consistent this year, and we controversially pointed out at the beginning of the season, and if anyone would like to go back and listen to what we actually said to prove that we were correct, we predicted that Western would miss the finals this year. Are they living up to their hype, or are they living up to our hype?
Well, we mentioned, we keep special attention to the player's haircut. Bulldogs have got the Johannesson, who's got the almost okay hairdo, but he may need a new haircut. I think he should change his bleached blonde to a shocking pink to be more obvious, so that the teammates can spot him easily. And what's his name? Bonte needs a haircut. I think he should think about getting new colours into his hair.
Yes, I think they do need some extra colours. Johannesson, he only had 7 possessions on last Thursday night, and as I mentioned, it does seem like it was a century ago, but it's only 7 possessions in a match, and that's not very good, considering that in the grand final last year, he absolutely destroyed Sydney. He had 33 possessions. So maybe he needs a different hairstyle, needs to stand out in the crowd. I agree, it possibly should be a shocking pink or even an iridescent green. That could work. Cast your mind back to 2 weeks ago. Port Adelaide crushed Hawthorn. Hawthorn didn't score in the first quarter, they only scored 3 points in the first half. But then, in round 12, Port Adelaide themselves were crushed by Essendon. What does this mean?
It means they're consistent. I was just checking out their record this year, and they constantly lose after they win. So they are in a way consistent, but you could say they're inconsistent.
So they're consistently inconsistent?
Yes, so we can predict that they will bounce back next week because they lost last week. And then the following week they will lose because they win.
Well, that's a very easy formula to follow, but what actually happened? Because I did watch the game. In the first half, Essendon were back to their 2000 grand final winning form. They actually absolutely steamrolled Port Adelaide in that first quarter.
The other thing you remember, Eddie, at the beginning of the year, I mentioned that Essendon might be a smoky because they had a sort of 12-month holiday last year, and they are very keen, eager to play footy again. And all the players, Essendon players, seems to be very vibrant and enjoying their footy.
So there's one amazing player that you really like for Essendon. Who is it?
It's McDonald Tipungwuti. I like the name, and I also realised that he's from Tiwi Islands. Do you know what's so special about Tiwi Islands to our footy culture?
Well, I only know that it's very north of Australia. It's in northern Australia. It's actually at the top of the Northern Territory, and it's home of AFL.
Yeah, almost. Apparently the community has got a population about 2,600, and out of that, 900 people take part in the footy. So that's about 35%. Imagine 35% of the population in Sydney plays footy.
Well, that's really hard to imagine because that would be 1.5 million people playing AFL football. Now, we've had a few issues that have come up during round 12, and it's the old issue about umpires, but this time it wasn't the umpire performance or players doing funny things or whatever, but it was a coach that got into a bit of strife. Can you tell me what happened?
Well, umpiring was, I thought, a bit dodgy in the game Hawthorn played, in which Alistair Clarkson was talking about. But also in the game we talked about between Melbourne and Collingwood, some Collingwood fans contacted us and echoed sentiments expressed explicitly by Hawthorn coach Clarkson. He said something like, he can't comment on the disgrace for umpiring, so I'm better off not saying anything. So it's like he said it, but he didn't say it. Is that correct?
Well, it's a little bit weird because it reminds me of the East German Stasi police before the fall of the Berlin Wall. He actually did say that he won't be commenting on disgraceful umpiring. So that, to me, is axiomatic. It means that he's just said that he won't be commenting on disgraceful umpiring. So I don't think he could have been any clearer about that. But the AFL decided that he needed to be reprimanded, made an example of, and they gave him a $20,000 fine.
Yeah, can we hear his comment again?
Yes, well, let's listen to it.
What did you make of it?
I'm not allowed to comment on disgraceful umpiring for me, so I'm better off not saying anything.
But you know what it's for, though? That's not breaking the rules, surely.
What's that, mate?
You know what it was actually for?
No, I don't know what it's for, mate. We didn't lose the game because of the umps tonight, or this afternoon, but there's a few dubious decisions over the course of the game that you just got to take the swings and roundabouts, and unfortunately we hit a few roadblocks in that regard today.
So there it is for the record. So it seems like speech is not so free in the AFL.
Well, you are the judge. You heard the comments about the umpiring and that we can be the judge. And he said it, but he didn't say it. That's my take.
Yes, it's a little bit like a Kafka novel, The Trial I'm thinking about. But yeah, it was very, very odd. So what do you think umpires should be allowed to say if they're asked direct questions about what they thought about the umpires?
It was disgraceful, but I can't say it.
I agree with you there. But we should also compare AFL coaches and what they can or cannot say about umpires and what soccer coaches quite often will say about referees at the end of the game. They say some of the most outrageous things about them, and that's not in the A-League in Australia, but the English Premier League, the Spanish League, the German League, the Scottish League, virtually every league in the world. After a match is played, they'll ask the coach or the manager, what did you think about the umpiring? And they'll say, well, it was disgraceful. I don't think it was up to standard. We need better umpires. And they'll just go for it. And there's no penalty for saying things like that.
They're not polite. We're the polite people, Australians. We can't say in a straightforward way. And it is soccer coaches' sort of requirements almost. You have to be able to perform badly, perform sort of outrageously. Otherwise, you don't get a job.
Yeah, so I think it's something that the AFL needs to look at. We keep saying this every week, the even season of 2017, even though 2017, the number is actually an odd number. But this season is very, very, very even. Everything is still up for grabs.
So you say it is even, that is odd.
It is odd that it is even, but it's the most even season since 1994, which is odd because that was 23 years ago.
Well, do you think Brisbane may be still in the hunt?
I think they could be because they had a massive victory over Fremantle. And I do like to point out, and for the people that do not believe us, go back to last week's podcast and listen to it. But we said that Brisbane would defeat Fremantle.
That wasn't too difficult to predict, judging the way Fremantle was travelling. I think they have only one way, and that's the way down, while Brisbane has got so much upside. If they can keep on beating the teams above them, which is plenty, they will make it sometime.
Well, things are starting to fall into place for Brisbane, but I feel that things are starting to fall into place for many, many teams, but maybe not every single week. And that's why we're getting such an even season. A team that plays exceptionally well one week will not be playing that well the following week.
Consistently inconsistent.
Yes, so it's just making for a fascinating season. We keep saying that it's all getting very exciting as we move towards the pointy end of the season, but I don't want this season to ever finish. It's just been one of the best that I've ever seen.
Of course, if we can extend the season by another 30 weeks or something, I think Brisbane has a really good chance of making it.
I really would like to see that. There's one other team that caught my eye during the week, and that was Melbourne. Now, of course, they played an exceptional game against Collingwood on Monday, and they did win the game. But their captain, Jack Viney, said something that was quite interesting. He said that the hardships that they've had over the past 10 years or so has made them mature and grow up a little bit and has made them a better team. Do you think that hardship, like that sort of level, toughens up a team and makes them or helps them win a flag?
It's been a long time since Melbourne won the flag, and how much more hardships they need to have before winning the flag. And one factor I'm sort of reminded by the locals, we're in the third week of Ramadan, and that is against the demons. According to Islam, all demons are locked up during the month of Ramadan, and we've still got another week to go. Yeah, until the end of Ramadan, which will be on the 25th, and they celebrate the end of fasting month. But until then, I think demons will struggle.
Well, they did actually play very well last weekend, but it will be very interesting to see what happens, because even with their demons locked up during the time of Ramadan, Melbourne have actually been playing well. So It will be interesting to see what happens when the Demons are released on June the 25th. Let's keep a lookout for that. One of the very special features that we have on the Protected Zone is that we decide to give a team a new song every week. We've done quite a few so far this year and we've actually lost track, but I think we've managed to find one. I think that we should look at the Adelaide Crows this week.
You know, to tell you the truth, I like their song, and you pointed out that it's almost a direct rendition of US Marines hymn. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Let's listen to it first.
We're the pride of South Australia, and we're known as the Adelaide Crows. We're courageous, stronger, faster, and respected by our foes. Admiration of the nation, our determination shows. We're the pride of South Australia, we're the mighty Adelaide Crows.
So yes, you're absolutely right. It is a direct rip-off, or rendition, whichever terminology you'd like to use. It's a direct rendition of the Marines hymn from the US, and it was first used in 1927.
Yeah, I like the, to tell you the truth, Adelaide version much better, and especially that bit, you know, admiration of the nation, kind of rhyming nicely.
It does rhyme very well, but it's a military song. I'm not so sure about it. Do you know if Curtis LeMay, the US general, do you think that he sang the song when the bombs were dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
In fact, Curtis, good old burner, he was part of the Air Force, and the Marines were involved in, fierce land battles, invasion of Okinawa, which took place towards the end of the war in 1945, in which a quarter of the local population was killed. And interestingly, June the 23rd is the day Okinawans mark as the end of organized battle. So it is fitting to mention the Marines, and their presence in Okinawa still causes a big problem. You know, there are lots of rape cases involving Marines. They go out and drink drive, and sort of rowdy behaviors. Also, the biggest issue at the moment in Okinawa is the relocation of a Marine station. They have one in a place called Futenma, and it sits right in the middle of a residential area, sort of like MCG, smack bang in the middle of Melbourne, but it's not football ground. But Marine Base and has got this dangerous plane called Osprey. They hover around noisy and they drop off from the sky. So, Okinawan people wants to get rid of it, but the Japanese government and US want to station Marines there.
Well, I think the song has got a little bit of a sad history, and I think that in support of the Okinawan people, the song for the Adelaide Crows definitely needs to change, and we'll let you know what that song is towards the end of the program. Round 13. I think there's quite a few interesting things happening there. Round 13. It's a lucky number for some.
Yes, only the 12 teams taking part in this lucky round. 6 teams are having a week off.
Yeah, so there's 12 teams participating, which means that there's only 6 matches. Yet again, I feel like we're being shortchanged here.
The good news is those 4-legged animals are back in action this week. Yeah, let's start looking at the West Coast versus Geelong involving the Cats.
Yes, and that's a Thursday night game. As I point out each week, you are not a fan of the Thursday night games, but we've got no say in the matter. So yes, West Coast against Geelong, and it's the rematch of the 1994 Grand Final.
Who won?
West Coast won that game.
Well, can they repeat the 1994 form? Lots at play, at stake in the game. People asking, can the Cats win outside their home?
Well, that's a very good question. West Coast are actually sitting in 9th position, so they're out of the finals race as we speak right now. Geelong are positioned at number 3. Geelong are in much better form. West Coast have fallen off the rails a little bit, but they are playing at their home ground.
Yes, admittedly, the 3 wins Cats string together, they were all at Geelong Cardinia Park. And people are, it is okay to ask, well, can the Cats, keep on winning outside their home, especially out in the West, in the House of Pain? Do you know if Josh Kennedy is back to play?
He hasn't been named yet. The coach, Adam Simpson, did say that he's probably not due to come back, but he might be playing some mind games there. He did injure his ankle quite severely, so I think we'll have to wait until the teams are announced.
Maybe they should get Josh Kennedy from Sydney.
They could, but it's a bit outside of the trade zone, so I think we might have to wait a little bit of time for that. But I think it's absolutely amazing that there's 2 Josh Kennedys that play for different teams. Imagine what would happen if there were 2 Josh Kennedys in the one team.
Yeah, the team of Josh Kennedys. Double the chance of winning, I think.
Yes, it would. We're not too sure if there will be any Josh Kennedys playing in the West Coast against Geelong match, but it will be an interesting tussle. We keep changing our opinions about who's going to be the premiership favourite. We were engraving Adelaide's name on it a few weeks ago. This week we've started engraving Geelong's name on the Premiership Cup. I don't know, are we reading this a little bit too early?
Well, a bit premature, I think, and the West Coast needs to win to keep their sort of hope happening. And judging from the trend that is the bottom, lower placed teams upsetting top side teams, following that tradition, I think I would go for West Coast.
I think I will go for West Coast as well. It's being played at Subiaco Oval. It's an obvious choice. Every round we like to do the opposite of what's expected, and we like to look at the ugly match of the round. Not that these 2 teams are so bad, but they're very low on the ladder. Gold Coast and Carlton. What do you think about this match?
Yeah, you think this is the ugly match of the round, but considering it's a very even season, they could be sitting very close to the top 8. I mean, Gold Coast still has, chance to make it to the top 8 if they win this game. If the Suns keep shining, they have still a chance to sneak into top 8. And the next week, we may be talking about Gold Coast as a sort of top side. We can't call it ugly round anymore. And that fluid this season is. And if Tom Lynch can fire, I think Gold Coast has got a chance.
Well, I will have to take back what I said about it being the ugly match of the round, because I've just had a look at the ladder. Gold Coast are just 1 game out of the top 8, and Carlton are just 2. And Gold Coast and Carlton are just 2 games out of the top 8. So I'll scrub what I said about it being the ugly match of the round. This is possibly the match of the round.
Yes, I don't think there is no more ugly bottom 6 side. Every team is trying to be a bottom side 6 while they're trying to be a top 8. So every week we have a sort of bottom side beating top side, and following week top side is no longer top side.
The other big match of the weekend is Richmond against Sydney. We talked about the Tigers coming back after having a holiday last week. Sydney absolutely caned Western Bulldogs last week. What can you expect to see in this match?
The Swans last week were their brutal best, taking the close out of Doggies, and Doggies looked so intimidated.
Now, we're always looking for a psychological effect one way or another. The Richmond-Sydney game is actually a rematch of the 1934 Grand Final. It was 83 years ago and Sydney was then known as South Melbourne, but do you think there's any psychological after effects from this game?
Can you tell me who won that 1934 clash?
Yes, it was Richmond that won the game 83 years ago.
Oh, that's a long time ago. I don't think any current Richmond players remember that. And if the Swans have to, make the top 8, avoiding the bottom 6 or bottom 8 or whatever, they have to keep winning. They have to win something like 8 matches or 9 matches from their remaining 11. So they have to keep on winning.
Yes, they do. And Richmond have been absolutely phenomenal over the past few weeks. They did have a holiday last week, but I'm tipping them to defeat Sydney this weekend.
I'll go for the Swans. I mean, this is another classic round of, bottom sides beating the top sides. Sydney to win.
We did mention that there's only 6 matches in this round, and I don't like to keep pointing it out, but I really do feel like I'm shortchanged. But anyway, we've got no choice in this matter. Western against Melbourne. Who do you think will win that game?
The psychology, as you mentioned, is at work. Melbourne is in a very unfamiliar territory. Have they ever been in the top 8 during last decade or so?
Well, they last played in the finals in 2006, so that was the last time that they were in the top 8 at the end of the season. They've been in the top 8 throughout the season, just a very small amount of times, but no, they haven't been in the top 8 for a very, very long time.
So all the players are thinking, well, it is a very foreign territory and they may not know how to behave, how to behave like a top 8 team. How often do you see the Melbourne sitting above the Western?
Not very often, but do you think it's a game that's not going to be won on the football field, but won psychologically?
Well, that plays a huge part in the UK election. When you're complacent, you will lose.
Well, if that's what you're saying, I think I'll choose Western.
Yeah, I think Western, even though they're kind of slipping away, but they're good at beating the team above them, so they should win.
Port Adelaide against Brisbane. You did mention before that Port Adelaide is an up and down team, up and down throughout most of this season. They're playing Brisbane. Will they be up or down?
They lost. Port Adelaide lost last week, so according to my calculation, based on the facts and figures and numbers, they should win. Brisbane, in theory, can still make it if the season's extended to another 30 weeks or so. But time may be running out. I'd say Port.
I'll go for Port Adelaide as well. And there's one final game to talk about, and that's North Melbourne against St Kilda. They're actually playing on Friday night.
Yes, while a couple of Tigers were sighted having a holiday in West Sumatra, I heard the rumour that North Melbourne were having a holiday in North Korea. Did you hear anything about that, or is that just a wild rumour?
No, I didn't hear about that. Tell me what happened.
Well, after we gave them a new team song last week, people spotted the entire team of North Melbourne catching a flight from Melbourne heading towards North Korea to learn that song properly.
And have they learned the song properly?
Well, we have to wait until they win another game. Our chairman, Kim, was impressed by the fellow comrades from another Northern Territory, North, who came to visit him.
Well, you do need practice and you need to learn from the best facilitators of that song, which is the North Korean Army Choir. So I hope that they did learn the song very well. St Kilda, I don't know where they were last weekend. It was almost like they were on holidays as well, even though they did play a game. But they're not travelling so well. It's their second Friday night game in a row, and Friday nights have not been going very well for them. So I think North Melbourne, with their new team song, acquired with practice from the North Korean Army Choir, I think they will do very well against St Kilda.
Yes, I'm sort of working out the formula. Bottom side will beat the top side. And North Melbourne sitting at, I think, 15th on the ladder, while St Kilda at the moment 12th. I think it's another upset. North Melbourne should prevail.
I agree with you there. I think North Melbourne will win. And in this season where upsets are becoming the norm, I think that if we do tip a team that's below another team on the ladder, it doesn't really constitute an upset because it's just happening so many times this year. But we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it looks like it will be a round of upsets this round 13. Lucky for some.
Yes, and lucky week for other teams who's having a bye. And I'll keep an eye on the, which team is having a holiday where. I've got this insider at the Melbourne airport keeping an eye on those player movements. So stay tuned next week.
Well, good luck with your plane spotter as well. So we'll get a report from your plane spotter next week. So you've been listening to The Protected Zone. We love to talk about AFL. We love to talk about the evenness of this odd season. We love to talk about upsets, the unpredictable things, politics, haircuts, you name it, we will discuss it here. So I'm Eddie J and...
It's Linton Anam, and we're signing off another episode of Protected Zone. You heard many things here first.
And we're going out with the new team song for the Adelaide Crows. We hope you enjoy it and see you next week.
Yo!